Hello, and welcome to another session. As always, Kevin Grote, Technical Partner Manager here at VMware. And today we've got a really cool session. Today we're going to be talking about vRealize Ops 6.1. And this is just a really quick technical update and overview into some of the fantastic technologies and changes that have been made in 6.1. You're also going to see some other videos inside of this playlist talking about some of the new capabilities with things like Blue Medora and what you can do with Operation 6.1, so be sure to check those out. Now, it's important to remember, we announced 6.1 at VMworld 2015. 6.1 is a dot release. So what does this mean? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept of a major, minor, or D-part development, effectively, a dot release means feature or fix. That's really what you're looking at. And so when we're talking about Ops 6.1 and all of the cool things it can do, just kind of put that in the back of your mind to remember this is just a dot release. So all of the cool things that it can do are only going to become magnified even further as the product continues to develop. So with that, let's take a look at vRealize Operations 6.1. One of the cool new features, and I think one that kind of went, let's just say unrecognized or not spoken about enough, is the idea of a CDC, or a custom data center. Really, what a CDC allows you to do is to create data center views that can even span entire vCenters. So when we look back at all of the things that we've been doing, think back to the announcements around vSphere 6. Right? The ability to do cross long distance vMotion, the ability to have content catalogs, all of these cool new features. With vSAN, being able to do stretched clusters. We'll talk about that more inside of the vSAN session. With Operation 6.1, now we also have the ability to create a view into those stretched data centers and to be able to see them just like it would see one vCenter cluster. So now you can combine hosts, clusters, entire data centers from one or more vCenter views. So some great use cases would be somebody who has multiple data centers, or maybe they have specific workloads that create a logical workload. What would that look like? Well, maybe they have 3 or 4 different clusters residing in different racks, disparate inside of the data center, but only logically connected because of what they're providing from a workload perspective. Well, now you could create a custom data center just for that workload using CDCs inside of Operation 6.1. So this is giving you really more capacity management and planning inside of this space, and it completely supports all of the analysis badges, and it basically just looks like a real vSphere data center. So someone can come up and go, hey, what's the health of my production West Coast CDC? Or what's the health and risk of this specific workload inside of operations? It's a really cool new view. Be sure to check this one out when you have the chance. We also have the ability to now visualize capacity distribution levels of the infrastructure. So what this really means, if we zoom in here for a second, is to say that we can see which workloads, which systems, which objects are living in the underutilized, overutilized zones, and also optimal zones. And what's really neat is you're also able to see just how close of a deviation things are to optimal and to overutilized. We can see here that inside of this optimal zone, we have a few objects that are becoming much closer to overutilized, and we have some that are sitting right in the center of that underutilized space. So we're able to magnify and look at these objects and to be able to see what the overall aspect of utilization and distribution is inside of our infrastructure. Again, creating even more gauges, more perspective into what's happening inside of your virtual data center than ever before. The workload balance plan is a whole new construct. So the new workload balance plan will allow vRealize ops to place workloads into their correct infrastructure compartments based upon availability and predictive analysis. And in 6.1, we also have the capacity to allot for a rebalance so that we can make sure that as we're looking at those over, under, and optimal utilization spaces, that those are all being approached effectively and that all the workloads are going where they need to go. So what's really working at the heart here? Some would think, well, doesn't this replace DRS? Well, no, it doesn't. This is a complement to DRS. And in fact, we have some best practices surrounding how to use this in conjunction with DRS. And we have to remember that DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduler, is a cluster-based technology where the workload balance is inherently an appliance-based technology. It lives inside of the operations construct. So these two things are not meant to replace each other. They're just augmentations to one another, giving that balance and forecasting and effective placement bionics so that it can do what it needs to do in as automated a way, as predictably as possible, as repeatable as possible. Policy really drives the workload balance plan. And if we look here, we can see that you can distribute inside of those spaces for optimization to avoid bottlenecks, avoid capacity risk, and to be able to fit workloads inside of the space they need to go with minimal risk and without having to deal with performance hits just because you need new deployments. And you can safely drive higher density, and when you drive higher density, that means you're going to save money on hardware. But when we drive higher density, we also know that we can potentially expose ourselves to risk. So you're able to drive density, drive performance right into that sweet spot where you're looking at optimal utilization without going into overutilization and overconsumption. So as I mentioned before, DRS and the workload balance plan, DRS is not being replaced by workload balancing. DRS is for performance assurance. Workload balance is for improved capacity utilization. So you can see how these two things work together. Workload balancing and rebalancing is making sure that the workloads go where they need to go. And then DRS is to make sure that they're highly performant down inside of the cluster. In 6.1, we also announced integrated OS and application monitoring. What this really means is all of the great things that we were doing all this time inside of Hyperic are now being baked into vRealize operations. So now vRealize Ops becomes all the more that single point where you can forecast, predict, and analyze a virtual infrastructure without having to snap on a bunch of additional components. And let's not forget, inside of 6, operations is now just one single appliance. So it scales easy, it's self-aware, and it provides all of these additional layers of exposure and functionality for all of the workloads and applications that exist inside of your environment. And you can see just a few of these applications here. The integrated OS and application monitoring brings us new capacity because now we are adding more value with it. We have clear centralized management. So now instead of having multiple UIs, it's all inside of one user interface. And as of version 6, the user interfaces started to align. So we no longer have a distinctly standard and a distinctly advanced look. The interface, the user interface has become truly unified. So with that single UI, it means that as you're deploying And as you're becoming more used to what you're doing inside of maybe a standard edition, you're able to easily make the migration into advanced and enterprise operations and integrate things like compliance, data compliance, automation, and integrations with storage, network, and physical layers, and building out more of what operations can do, all without completely retooling what you know about ops. I want to thank you very much for taking time to be here today. Hopefully this was good information for you to give you a very high-level overview of some of the new technical capacities that exist in vRealize operations. Be sure to look out for some of the additional sessions that are coming regarding the Blue Medora integrations and some video demonstrations of what you can do with these new ops capacities and these technical developments. As always, thanks for joining. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.